this is a process that we want to continue. We want it to be sustainable over time. We want people to be motivated to stay engaged for the long haul. And a really important part of that process, of course, was the public engagement piece and the reform of the policing and public safety. We know that that recognizes that there are historic inequities that must be addressed in the Black community.
We have to really gird ourselves for the long haul. This is not going to be over with one policy, one day, or one conversation. It's going to be ongoing and iterative. And things will still happen. That there'll still be bad things will still happen. I think what the public wants to know is that there's a system to hold people accountable and to find out patterns of practice, right? Thanks to the president's challenge, we were able to accelerate our efforts to creating a police review board. But in Stockton, our review board looks different because the city manager is a day-to-day manager of the city. So it's the city manager's police review board, which is amazing because the police chief reports to the city manager. So once a month, the city manager, 25 community members will look at all police data. And one of the first things we'll be doing is looking at our calls for service and answering the calls from people in our community who are saying, we don't want law enforcement to be first responders to homelessness or to poverty or to mental health.
When George Floyd's incident happened, it was a call to action to all cities, all states, everyone, county, to relook at how they were doing their policing. And what we decided to do was hold a virtual discussion on racism. And out of that came the concept of developing the Chiefs Roundtable, which we've done. It has 12 members on it. And there are people that are not involved in service clubs, not elected, but really are citizens that have a strong say. And they are working with our chief. He is showing them what he is doing in our police department, and they are commenting and making sure they take that information and provide suggestions. We adopted racism as a public health crisis. We were the first city in the Inland Empire outside of the county of San Bernardino that took that up. My council members and I felt it was important that we do that right away. And what we're doing now is reviewing that proclamation so that it's just not a piece of paper, but it's going to be part of our culture in this city. As that is done, we are engaging with the Chiefs Roundtable. We're making sure that our Park and Rec Human Services Commission provides detail to the public of how they can become more involved in what we're doing as a community.
This is an ongoing conversation, not just about violence in and of itself, but also how we engage and address social problems in our world and the lens by which we do that. So we engage in a very aggressive year-long process to develop what is known as the Blueprint for Peace. We intentionally were very clear that, number one, this would not just be the mayor's plan. This had to be a plan owned and driven by the community. So that was one piece. And two, we did not want to shoulder the issue of gun violence in our community on the backs of young people. Even though, we've seen nationally that in terms of violent crime related to young people has gone down, young people are still feared and looked at as the drivers of a lot of ills in communities, and that comes with both political and policy consequences. And so those were some of the driving factors that were kind of non-negotiables as it relates to our plan, because we also wanted the plan to outlive any political administration. And so the values of the plan are rooted in community, meaning that it had to be community-centered, equity, understanding that different forms of violence impact different communities and populations differently. So we did a very iterative process where we engaged over 1,000 young people, survivors of violence, former perpetrators of violence, as well as the philanthropic business community, healthcare sector, and everybody being involved, because we didn't want to just say this was an all hands on deck effort. We wanted to demonstrate that. And so the results of that is a blueprint that has 30 comprehensive strategies that looks at everything from gun violence to domestic violence, human trafficking, but also is very clear and unapologetic about systemic and structural violence. So there are specific strategies in the blueprint pertaining to police violence. The blueprint or any plan means nothing if there's not the political or community will to actually move that plan forward.
A lot of times we find that the reason people don't show up is because they're not being spoken to in the language that they are responsive to, right? So in order to pull different people in. You have to meet them where they are and then figure out how to pull them in. How do you create a space that is welcoming for people? And then from that space, making sure they have the tools and tips they need and supports that they need, right? Are you providing childcare, things of that nature? And a lot of what we do is facilitating dialogues and training people how to not just organize community dialogues, but also facilitate. And then when you're facilitating these dialogues, you need certain tips and techniques in how do you run the room, read the room, give people what they need to be comfortable to have these candid conversations in order to build that trust, right? Because if we're going to be moving at the speed of trust, we need to trust one another. So I think that's a very big key component to doing community work.
One of the things we did as we talked to residents is ground them in that fact that close to half of the budget was going to policing. And one of the things that was most striking was when we had these conversations, residents said, but I call them, they still don't answer. So they're getting half of the city's budget, and when we call them, they're still not answering, or when we call them, they're profiling us. And so that was striking. And so what we wanted to do is have the conversation with residents about what else could be possible. What a world be like, what a city could look like if we take some of that money from the police budget and begin to reinvest them in programs that residents need and want. And so that's how we surveyed folks, and we used great community partners. We went door to door, but we also met residents where they're at to ask them what are the things they want. What are the things they want in their community? And what came from that is it's really basic things. They want access to affordable quality housing, or they want their kids to have access to opportunities over the summer. One of the striking moments as we're surveying people and we're having this conversation, a grandmother, I said, if we could reinvest money somewhere, where would it go? She says, wow, I really wish my grandkid had something to do over the summer instead of just running the streets. I really wish my grandkid had something to do, had access to an internship where they could learn. And that was striking to me. One of the things is, because of the protest, we have this platform, this demand that we're passionate about when we started last year. This defund demand is on the table because of the people. Within the survey results are very specific policy proposals with price tags, and our job is to engage folks in the street and elected officials around that and push forward a very clear demand, the demand that they want to see put squarely on the table.
It's a process that puts decisions in community hands, and that's what we're talking about right now. There are steps in the process where community and government come together to ideate, to turn ideas into real tangible projects, and then vote on what gets funded in their communities. What mayors can draw from PB is a commitment throughout the participatory process to make sure that the expertise of all community members is valued and respected. Let me put it to you like this. If I was gonna build a building, I'd go get an expert. I'd get an architect. I wouldn't want the building to fall down. But if I'm to build a healthy and thriving community, I need to have experts, people that live, learn, experience that community on multi-dimensions every day. And in order to be successful, we have to value that expertise and recognize it as expertise. When we do that, we're able to marry content and context expertise in a way that allows us to get where we're going and see the changes in community that we've talked about so much. A key part of any effort to reimagine, transform, and rebuild is a willingness to not only open doors for input, but be ready to really hear that input. We have to hear what people need, what they're asking for, and be ready to really engage with that reality, in particular to take action. But it's important as leaders that we're really ready and willing to dive into those conversations and not shut down innovation, because that is where innovation is born. PB is an opportunity to build a network of leaders and demystify government and government departments so that people feel like they're a part of shaping them and building their futures together. And through that process, we're able to build solutions that actually, truly, really work. And part of that too is like bringing community along with that and building the hard and soft skills. This is a network of leadership. Some people describe it as a leadership pipeline. I think this is how we change the us versus them narrative. Government is the people that show up, and we have to make sure that people can show up and participate in decision making. You know, people really think about and talk about reimagining and imagination, and it's how important it is right now. But I think that it's actually the responsibility of law enforcement to honor these new visions of safety, even if they don't include policing as we've traditionally seen it. We have to trust that community is able to determine and imagine what safety is. If that looks like a limited view of law enforcement and really a recognition that we have to change the way that we think about safety, that's what we have to do. Well, I think the first thing to do is listen and learn. I think a really great place to start is at the Participatory Budgeting Project's website. Understand what we're talking about. And then to challenge yourself, your administration, the folks around you to dream big and then dream bigger.
This is a huge moment where we have an opportunity to begin to rectify like so many of these problems and equities within policing. So dream big and like look at some alternatives that have been tried and tested, bring those to community and see like what they like about it, what they would change, because like right now every solution works in every community, but look really seriously into some of the alternatives.
We have to keep the community at the center and heart of our work and move with courage. And we also have to understand that it's not just the absence of violence that we should be working towards. It has to be the presence of justice and opportunity, and understanding that speed moves at the speed of trust.
I would advise mayors to really look at their community services. If they are set up that they provide constant programming to include your community, then you can work with that community to provide the necessary programs to make sure you keep your young people engaged, take care of our seniors who are so vulnerable. I always tell the story of a parent that came to me about 3 years ago. Her son got in the car with some friends and they weren't doing what they should have been doing. And that happens. But the officers did not arrest them. They took them home and they talked to the parents. We're a large city, but we still have a small town atmosphere. And we try to make every effort we can to work with all. So the advice is dig into your budgets and figure out what are you actually doing. Are you taking advantage of your parks? Are you taking advantage of your community centers? Are you working with all your nonprofit organizations or all your organizations to bring them to the table and get input? Everybody's not happy here, and I know that. But that's another reason that I need to get out there and make sure I make myself available to hear their concerns and their suggestions. And it has to happen. It can't be up in these offices. That's not gonna work. You've gotta get out in the community and take your officers with you.
Call for an audit of your calls for service. Just let's look and see what people are calling the 911 for. And I think it'll be illuminating, not just for the mayor, but for the whole community. What are people calling for? And that just opens all the conversations to be courageous and bold and to act on the data.
If you're doing this for the community, when the community's voices are getting put out there, you have to be willing to listen and make those changes. Document and evaluate your work, right? Everything that you're going to be doing in terms of reaching out to community, it is very important that you know what was done, what worked, what didn't work. And then that way, next time you want to put together a community project or whatever have you, you can learn from the mistakes you made, keep doing the things that worked really well, keep reaching out to the people who are staying involved, right? And if someone wasn't as involved that you originally reached out to, then figure out what are those things that are blocking their engagement and blocking their involvement.